Hello and welcome to the first of our software skills modules for EstimatorXpress. This will be a series of 4 videos which will be able to help you learn how to use EstimatorXpress and get the most out of it. These accompany the training courses which are going out, and there will also be written document versions of these so you can have those alongside the videos. The format of each video will be myself stepping through the software, and the way for you to use it to teach yourself is basically get used to using the pause button. So as I go through tasks and you want to repeat them yourself on the software, merely pause the video and then you continue. A quick bit about me. My name's Ed Britton. I'm the Business Support Manager. I've been here at HBXL for nearly 8 years now, so I've got a good idea of the software, and I've been running the training courses for the last 4 or 5 years, so I've got a good handle on the sort of things that you as a builder who's new to the software may want to be learning. So without any further ado, let's get cracking with the software. Okay, we're going to start off by having a quick look at the main menu of EstimatorXpress. Over here on the right hand side of the screen we have a pop-up screen where we will put various advertisements or information. The middle of the screen tells you about the status of your support, merchant accounts, and also whether you're running the latest version. Here on the bottom left we have pictures for all the various bonus packs, and it will tell you which ones you have got installed in the software. Our main menu options are here in the middle, and to the top right hand corner you have the details of who the software is registered to. As you can see, this one is registered to myself. Okay, so just a quick tip number 1. If you wish to change the registered details on here, either you've typed them wrong or your company name has changed or the address has changed, this is a very simple one, a nice quick one to get started with the software. You merely click on the area where your address is up here, and the box then pops up with your address details, allowing you to edit them. Once you've made any changes, you simply click on Update and the changes will appear on the top screen. Okay, so Module 1, we're going to be looking at the price book. So to get to the price book, on the main menu you need to start off by clicking on My Settings. Once you have done that, click on My Price Books, and this will bring you into the library of price books. Okay. Now, a quick explanation about selecting things in EstimatorXpress. If you see here, I have a master price book. I shall just click on it once. Okay, if I want to open up a price book, or it's the same if I want to open up a specification or a workbook, all these things we will come to later, any item in EstimatorXpress can generally be opened in 3 ways. The first way is you can double click on the item, but be wary of that. If you catch the bottom of the field, so you'll see that my cursor there has a 4-way cross, what will happen is if I double click now, my cursor will drop down the screen 65,000 lines, and I'll then spend a minute or so scrolling back up. So if you're not a very good double clicker, a bit like me, avoid that option. The second option is I can select Master Price Book, as I have done there, and I can click my right mouse button. This gives me a context sensitive menu, and in this place it gives me options to open a price book, copy or delete. Never delete your price book, that would be a bad idea. So I could open the price book. Just going to click off there a sec. The third option I've got is I can click on the master price book, and I can of course use one of the options on the top menu. So that would be open price book. As we go through this training module, you'll see that generally I will use either a right click option or I'll use the menu. You'll never see me double click, I don't do it. Okay, so what we need to do now is open up our price book. So select it, and by whichever method you want, open up the price book. I'm going to use the top menu. When you do this, you see you are given 5 different sections of the price book to look at. We're going to start at the top and work our way to the bottom. So we'll have a look first at the labour section. So click on labour and then click on the select button. Okay, so we're now presented with our labour price book. As you can see, looking down the left hand side, there is a column entitled description, and on here it has the various types of labourers that we use for pricing in EstimatorXpress. You will see this is a mix of individual labourers, for example a bricklayer, mates, shall we call it, so a bricklayer's mate, joiner's mate, etc. And then also gangs that are made up of combinations of the skilled labourer and also your general labourers. The price that you see here is a price by the hour. So you can see here we have a unit of column, and you'll see that all these labourers are purchased by the unit hours. Okay. And what that does mean is if you pay people by the day, you will need to divide what you pay them by the day by 8. So for example, if somebody is on £160 a day, that equates to £20 an hour. And it is the cost to you of employing that person. So bear in mind all the costs that are involved in paying somebody. So if you have pension schemes, insurance schemes, etc., anything else you're paying into that goes towards the overall cost of that labourer, depending on how your company is set up, then you need to make that as the cost to you to employ that person. Now the other thing to look at on here obviously is there are many labourers, and you may not employ that many labourers. It would be unusual that most building companies are smaller than that. You will probably have a few guys, and then maybe some guys who are multi-trade. So for example, if you have Jeff, should we use, who is your bricklayer, and you pay him £25 an hour, and Jeff is also your joiner, you would set both of those rates to £25 an hour. If you have a mix of multi-trade people, then set the multi-trade rates to the most expensive multi-trade person. It is unlikely that you will lose a job because you've got an extra £100 labour on a job, but if you do it the other way around, the £100 that you undercharge you will lose from your profit, and that's a guaranteed. Okay, so with that in mind, what you now need to do is edit the prices of your labourers. So in all sections of the price book, to do editing of prices, the easiest way is to click on the mass editing tool on the top menu, and then click on this button that's called Edit Prices. Okay, and you'll now see that the purchase cost column has turned white. Okay, so this brings us to the next rule in EstimatorXpress. You cannot type somewhere where the background is blue. So for example, if I put my mouse on this field here and I type on my keyboard, you'll see there that I get a message telling me that the cell or chart is protected and therefore read-only, so I cannot type in it. So you could only type where the background is white. So by pressing the mass editing tool and then selecting Edit Prices, it's turned this column white, so we can now make some changes. So I'm going to just change a few. We don't have to do the whole price book. Obviously, in reality, you would do this, but just for training purposes, I'm just going to do a few examples. So I'm going to change my bricklayer to £25 an hour. Okay, and then I'm going to press enter, that's important. And my bricklayer's labourer, I'm going to change him to £12 an hour. And I can either press enter or click somewhere else. It is important that you press enter or click somewhere else to confirm the figure. If you change a figure, so if I do that and change that to 10, you will see I have a flashing cursor in the box. Until I confirm that, I cannot get out of this screen. I can't close the price book, I can't make any changes, I can't finish this mode. So you have to press enter or click somewhere else to confirm the figure. Like that. Okay, I'm going to set that back to 12. Right, so what you've hopefully noticed there is that I've changed the bricklayer and I changed the labourer, but the bricklayer and the labourer didn't automatically change, nor did the other gangs. None of these are intelligently linked, so it won't happen automatically. So if you have changed the price of a labourer, you need to look at any gangs that use that labourer and also adjust those prices. So for example here, a bricklayer and a labourer will become 25 plus 12, so that is 37. 2 bricklayers and a mate or labourer will become 2 lots of 25 plus 12, so that's 62. And a 4 and 2 gang will of course become twice what that is, so that would be 124. Okay, and then I would make my way down the price list, looking at each person and setting their rate. Once you have spent probably about 15 or 20 minutes setting these up, it shouldn't take you too long. Hopefully you have a rough idea of what you're paying your employees. To switch this mode off, we go back to Mass Editing Tool and we click Edit Prices. The mode comes off. If I want it back on, Mass Editing Tool, Edit Prices on, Mass Editing Tool, Edit Prices off. Okay, and that's it. That's the labour section of the price book. It's fairly small piece of editing for you. The impact it will have on that is that approximately 40% of typical construction costs are labour. So it means that you've now got about 40% of your costs will be correct when you come to the time of estimating. So that's quite a big impact for not a lot of work. What we want to now is the big section of the price book, which is the material section. So to change over to that, we can either leave the price book, open it back up and choose a different section, or far more simply, we can go to our top menu where we have our various sections, click on this drop down, and we can select material. Right, before we do any editing on the material section of price book, the next tip. On most screens you will see there will be either a view or a filters button. Okay, if you click on this view or filters button, you'll see there's an option here called highlight selected line. If you select that, it switches on and you now have a nice yellow highlighted line. So if you choose something and you scroll across the page, you can see what the item is you're looking at. Far easier to follow across the page. Right, so before we start editing the price book, as you can see, it's quite large. You'll see that my price book, I've got multiple merchants here. So if I quickly sort of whiz down, you'll see that I spend a long time scrolling down, and I've probably got about 10,000 products in my price book, all told. So that's rather a lot. So let's go back up to the top. So the price book can seem quite daunting. However, it's very easy to chop the material section of the price book up into small palatable sections. So there's a couple of filters we're going to have a look at, and we're going to just do this a few times as a bit of practice. The first filter we're going to look at is choosing the supplier. So I want to just look at my HBXL price tracker products, for instance. So I can click on my heading up here which says supplier, and you'll see I have a little filter button to the right hand side. If I click on this, I have a list. I can tick select all, and that will unselect everything. I can then just choose HBXL price tracker, click OK, and now I just have price tracker products. Okay. If you just want to practice to try again, if you have some other merchants in your price book, click on the filter button. I can maybe untick price tracker and I could choose, say, Juicen, for example. Okay. This is for all the downloadable merchants, which of course is Juicen, Travis, Keyline, TradePoint, Build Warehouse, and of course some of you may also see the Crystal PVCU products downloading. Now the other filter we have here is where you can filter to look at different types of products. So I can choose a supplier that I want to look at, and then I can choose the type of product that I want to look at. So I'm going to go back to HBXL price tracker again, so I'm going to click on supplier filter. Okay, so now I've just got price tracker. And then on the types at the top here, because we have material types, we have it on the column, but on some people's screens that disappears off, so we've put it on the top menu as well. So I find it easier to use it up here. I can click on the drop down for types, and you can see here that it lists all the different types of materials that are in the software. It's quite a comprehensive list. And for our purposes, we're going to choose blocks, so we can have a look at the HBXL price tracker blocks. Now I've done it this way on purpose because you have noticed that having done my blocks filter, all my suppliers have come back. So once again I need to click on supplier and go in there and just have HBXL price tracker selected. I do that on purpose, a little bit of practice. Okay, so now we've done that, we can do some editing of our block prices. Okay, so if I want to edit the prices of my blocks, exactly the same as we did in the labour section of the price book, we go to Mass Editing Tool and we click on Edit Prices, and once again the purchased cost column turns white. So let's imagine that our 7 U-turn 440-215 by 100mm blocks, the standard blocks you use in the wall, these are purchased by the square metre, so you see that here's a unit of supply. Always be wary of unit of supply. Make sure that you are looking at a unit of supply here which tallies to how you're buying it. Okay, you need to match them up. So if you buy these blocks individually, you need to work out what they cost a square metre. Of course, blocks are traditionally bought by the square metre, and you'll find that that's reflected in the software, that most of the products are purchased in the traditional way that you would do so from a merchant. So blocks are traditionally bought at a square metre price. We have a default price here of £13. That is the average RRP. Your trade price is probably going to be something more like £8, for example. So let's just set those to £8. And let's have a look at our trench blocks there by the square metre, and let's just set these, the 215 by 300mm ones, so typical wall thickness trench block. Let's set those to say £35 a square metre. Okay. Once again, you would edit all the ones that are relevant, ignore the ones that you don't need to change. And again, once you've done that, we're going to click on Mass Editing Tool and Edit Prices to finish that off. This time though, you will get an additional pop-up, and this will say, would you like your price to be an adjustment to list price and continue to track market fluctuations? Under nearly all circumstances, the answer to this would be yes, so click yes. Okay, what you can now see, if I put my cursor here, is that my blocks now show an adjustment value. So what we're saying here is that the HBXL price tracker, which tracks the average price of the market, says that blocks at the moment are typically £13 a square metre. Your purchase cost of £8 comes to 38.46% less than the average market price. So what that means is, should the average market price jump up to £15, what will happen is that 38.46 subtraction will happen, and your new purchase cost will become £15 minus 38.46%, so that'll go to £9.50 or something. Because if the average market price of material goes up, you can pretty well guarantee that your merchant that you're buying will also be putting up their prices in line with the market. Once the big boys put their prices up, everybody else follows. Okay. And you can see here again for the trench blocks, we have an average price of £49, your purchase cost is £35, so your purchase cost is 28.57% less than the average market price. If this jumps up, your new purchase cost will also jump up and it will be 28.5% less than the new average price. And of course the benefit of this is it means that once you have done some price editing, which might initially seem a bit of a laborious task, you don't have to do it again. And if you bear in mind that quite often when you're estimating, you're probably repeatedly looking at prices and searching for prices of materials, this is something you have a tendency to do pretty well every job anyway. So what you're going to do is spend some time editing prices, potentially, and when once it's done, it's done. You would probably review them maybe once every 6 to 12 months just to check nothing's changed. Of course, if you've been given some better terms by your merchant, you might want to put those into the software. Now what I would say is it is a valuable process to follow through on this, because if you have accurate purchase costs, it means later on when we're looking at reports, which we'll be doing in Module 4, you'll be able to see more accurate profit forecasts. Okay, if you leave these as high prices with the idea that some builders have, which is, well, it's okay because it means I'm always making a profit, what it does mean is you actually have no idea what your profit is going to be. You have no visibility of your real profitability. It's far better to have very accurate costs and then use that data afterwards. For your sales price, you can adjust that through your profit markups, okay? But it's always best to start out with accurate costs. The adage, put good in, get good out, is very, very relevant to EstimatorXpress. So, what we're going to do now as a bit of practice is do exactly the same as we've just done there, but let's go and choose some aggregate products instead. So, from the top menu, where it says types, we're going to click on the drop down, and this time we're going to choose our aggregates. Okay. Once again, you'll see that all the other merchants will come back, and I want to edit the HBXL price tracker aggregate prices. So click on supplier, click on the filter, deselect all, choose HBXL price tracker, and click OK. And as before, let's edit the price of some of these. So let's click on Mass Editing Tool and Edit Prices. You'll see that the purchase cost column has turned white. And I'm now going to edit some costs. I'm going to do the two bulk bags we've got at the top and just a standard handy bag of sand. I'm going to set these bulk bags to £35 each. And I'm going to set my handy bag of sand to £2. And then once again, once I've finished all my editing, I'm going to go Mass Editing Tool and Edit Prices. And again, I'm going to click Yes. And once again, you can see here that I have an adjustment figure telling me that my purchase cost is a certain percentage less than the average market price. And once again, should the average market price go up, my purchase cost will automatically go up in line with the market. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of merchant links. And you may have a merchant link with someone like Jewson, Travis, Keyline, TradePoint, etc., Build a Warehouse. But that doesn't mean that you'll be using that merchant for all your products. So, for example, if we look here, we have aggregates. It's quite common that people will use a major merchant for their products, but may buy their aggregates from, say, a local quarry, or you've got another merchant who's very good on the aggregate prices. If that is a realistic scenario, what you can do is you would download your main merchant's products. You would then edit the HBXR price tracker products to match your third-party supplier, so a supplier that we don't have in our downloads. Okay, so the local quarry, for example. Later on, I'm going to show you there's a way that you can do a pick and mix, so you can choose which materials and which supplier will be used in your estimates. So, for example, we could say I'm going to use one of the main merchants for all my products except aggregates, and I'm going to set my aggregates to be HBXR price tracker aggregates because they're actually the prices that are coming from my local quarry. Now we've had a quick look at that, we're going to have a quick chat about bricks before we go on to adding our own materials and the such like. So if you'd like to again go to types and go to the filter up here and choose bricks, and then once again go to the supplier filter and just have HBXR price tracker selected. And what you'll see here is a list of typical brick prices. The reason we do this is because there are thousands and thousands of bricks out there on the market. There are numerous companies, each of whom sell 100 to 200 different brands of brick. So instead of trying to put all of those in the software, which would be a monumental task, what we do is we put some typical prices into the software. And once again, referring to the future, when you start an estimate, there's actually a screen which asks you what price of brick you'll be using on the job, assuming it will have brick walls. Obviously, if the job is going to be block cavity walls, for example, then you wouldn't bother changing the brick price. This is a much easier way of just choosing typical price bricks, and you'll see that we have standard facing bricks, and we also have reclaimed facing bricks as well. And this process of selection is done by something called a mini spec. Once again, we'll be looking at in a later module. So that's bricks explained. What we're going to do now is have a look at adding some materials of your own. Okay, so for practice purposes, what we're going to do is we're going to add a bespoke insulation product to the software. Now, regarding adding materials to a price list, basically, if there is an item that you have a cost, you know how you buy it, by what sort of quantity, and you know what it's called, okay, all fairly easy things to do, then you can add it to the price book. Okay, you can actually add to any section of the price book. You can add labourers if you want to, and you can add sundries and other things we'll look at later. But the most common thing is you might want to add in a material that we don't have in the price book. Okay, we want to add, for practice purposes, a new bespoke type of insulation product. So again, on the top, let's go to our types, and let's change from type bricks. Let's go and select insulation. Okay, again we have a big list, so to make this list a little bit easier to look at, let's click on supplier and let's again just filter to HBXR price tracker. As I mentioned before, when you are looking at the price of products, and especially when you're creating one of your own, one of the things you need to make sure you're aware of is a unit of supply. So if we look at our insulation products here, we have a unit of supply of EA, which means each, PK is a pack, each is obvious. Cavity closer, this is bought by the meter. SH, that means sheet, each sheet. Okay, so you have various descriptions. So when you're buying a insulation product, if we look here at, say, our polyisocyanurate boards, Celotex or Kingspan to layman, you'll see that they are obviously bought by the sheet. If we look at insulated plasterboard, again that's bought by the unit of each. So sheet and each actually kind of mean the same thing. It's one of, okay, it's an item. Okay, if we look up here, we have the cavity wall insulation pack, which is 10 sheets of 5.46 square meters. whilst it's 10 sheets, the unit of purchase is each because it's actually a pack. Okay, so it could be each, it could be pack. Okay, they mean the same thing. It is a unitarily bought item. One that is different is the cavity closer. That's bought by the meter, so it's bought by the length, so that will be calculated. So what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves some sheep's wool insulation. It's not very common. I'm using it as an example because hopefully it will stand out in your mind. Okay. Now, when you create a product, as I said before, you can create anything you like. However, if you're creating something that's a little bit similar to something that already exists, just to save time and make it a bit easier for yourself, it's easier if you actually start out by using a similar existing product as a template. So in this example here, what we're going to do is going to use our cavity wall insulation pack because I'm going to replace that with sheep's wool, which is for cavity wall. So to create a new resource, we highlight our similar item, and on the top menu, or via the right click option, we can do new resource. Okay. So our new resource box pops up, and what you'll see is it has been pre-filled in with the details from the insulation product that we use as our template. So the first thing I want to do is change the description of the product. So in here I'm going to type in sheep's wool 4 meters by 380 millimeters by 100 millimeters. Okay, I've just completely made that up, so don't worry if that's not real. I'm now going to put in a unit cost. So let's say here that it is £47.50 for one of these packs or bales. No discount and no adjustment because I'm putting in my purchase cost. Okay. We have unit of purchase. Okay, now I'm actually going to say that this is a roll of sheep's wool. Okay, so if I go to unit of purchase and click my drop down, I have a roll. Now I can select ones with specific lengths, but I'm just going to pick roll. Okay. Now what you will notice is that to the right hand side there is a plus button. So if you're buying something by a unit of purchase that we don't already have, I can click on plus and type in a new unit of purchase. Okay. I'm not going to on this example. I'm just going to use an existing one. The supplier. Okay, I could leave this as HBXL price tracker, or I could say actually that this is another supplier. So I could click on plus and say that my supplier is Bob's Wool. Apologies for the lack of imagination there. Click OK, and you now see that I have a supplier called Bob's Wool. Type of product is insulation. Okay, it got that information because we used an insulation product, and it's kept that, so that's fine. Delivery 2 weeks, payment 5 weeks, so whatever's relevant. Okay. VAT, and then the amount of wastage. You'll see that on most products we have a 7.5% wastage. Okay. Obviously, if you think you're going to use all of this, you can make that less, or you can make it more. Okay. Once you're happy with all that, you can click on OK. And you'll see now that you have your sheep's wool product in, and you'll notice that the list price is in red. The reason for this is that's to show that it is something that you have created yourself. Any product with a red list price will never be adjusted by HBXL, so that's something you'll have to manage yourself. I'm going to show you a little bit more about that shortly. So for practice, let's go and make another type of product. So this time, click on types at the top, look for bathroom. Once again, go to your supplier and filter and choose just HBXL price tracker. Okay. And this time look for, you'll see that we've got a couple of allowance bathroom packs. Okay. Now we have some workbooks which calculate the cost of fitting out a bathroom. It has a cost of the bathroom itself, the suite, and also things like boxing in, connecting to the soil pipe, etc. Now what that workbook will do by default is cost for a £250 bathroom pack, as we can see here, which is probably fine if you're doing cheap rental fit out, student accommodation, that kind of thing. Very much a trade fit out. Okay. Obviously you will have circumstances where your client does not want a £250 bathroom. They might want one that's £1,000, £5,000, £10,000, possibly even more. So what you can do is you can actually add your own bathroom packs to the software. You could add a specific suite if you know exactly what the item is that you're buying for the customer. And what some of our builders like to do is they like to create themselves a little bit of a picking list of typical different prices, just so they can put an advisory cost in the estimate. You would, of course, when you're talking to the client about the quote, explain that the cost for the bathroom is I guess it's a provisional figure, it's not a final figure, okay? So some people like to include that just so there's a sort of ballpark cost in there for the bathroom, okay? So what we can do is we can make a few different bathroom suites with different prices. So once again, we're going to highlight a bathroom suite. I want to click on New Resource. And you'll see that it starts out with a description from the item we used as our template. Again, I'm going to delete some of this. And I'm going to change this to say bathroom pack, bath, sink, toilet, executive. So if it prints out on the customer's quote, they can say, oh, I'm having an executive bathroom, am I? I can put on here a price of £2,500. Delivery and payment, whatever I want them to be. If I want to, I could add another supplier. For speed, I'm going to leave it as price tracker. And wastage, I'm actually going to leave that at 7.5% because that actually supplies me a little bit of fix to deal with material rounding up. If you want to, you can set it to 0. My advice is actually leave it there because it resolves some minor shortfalls in the material costs, which we'll look at when we do Module 4. So if you're happy with all that, click OK. There we go, we have our executive bathroom suite. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my executive bathroom suite and I'm going to do New Resource. So now I'm going to have my bathroom suite. I've got executive and I'm going to have a deluxe so that our customer feels super special. I'm going to set this one to a price of 7,500. You of course can describe these however you like and whatever sort of prices you typically come across. Click OK. So I've very quickly made myself now 2 new bathroom suites, which when I'm estimating bathrooms, I have a choice of a couple of different bathroom suites that I can tell my workbook to make use of, and that will go towards my costs. As I mentioned a minute ago, you'll see that the price is in red, which means you have to manage the price yourself. So let's start off by we're looking at the entire price book again. So go to Types on the top and click on All. And there's an easy way to be able to see all the products that you've added in yourself. Go to the List Price column this time. So click on the heading of List Price, click on your filter button, and this time we're going to do something clever. We're going to filter by colour, and we're going to filter by the font colour red. And there, hey presto, we can now see the 3 items that I've added to the price book. So if we imagine this is a year's time from now, and I know that these have changed a little bit, I can see the items I've added. I can go Mass Editing Tool, Edit Prices, and I can say that my deluxe bathroom has now gone up to a price of about £8,000. My executive one's about 2,750, and my sheep's wool has actually dropped. It's dropped down to £43. Okay, make my changes, Mass Editing Tool, Edit Prices again. This time, because these are products that I've created, I'm going to say no to this adjustment. There's no point in saying yes to the adjustment because, as I mentioned before, the list price in red will never be modified by HBXL, so there will never be an adjustment here, so say no to that. That is the material section, so we have edited prices and we've created up some products of our own. As I mentioned before, you can create anything that you can think of. If you can buy it, you know how much it costs and you know how much you pay per unit, per sheet, per gallon, per ton, per square meter, etc. You can add it into the software. Right, so that's materials. On to the next section, which is plant. So once again, we're going to go to the top menu and we're going to go to the section button and I'm going to click on plant. Okay, so this is a list of equipment that you will use whilst building your client's house extension, renovation, etc. And the cost in here is either the cost of renting the equipment, hiring it, or it's to go towards the cost of ownership because you might actually own some of this equipment, but you've obviously had to buy that equipment. So in essence, you are renting it out to clients. So the prices in here we don't adjust to HPXL because the plant costs have been pretty static now for about 10 years. However, I'd still advise you just to cast your eye over some of the items. There are a few that we want to point out specifically. These three items here with the drivers, the HiMac, the JCB and the mini digger, they are a cost of renting the equipment plus paying somebody to drive it for a day. So for example, if a mini digger costs £100 a day to hire, and the person that you're driving it, which is it could be either someone you're paying specifically to do that, or it could be one of your guys who's driving it. If you imagine that person was on £160 a day, you would set this price to be 100 plus 160, so that would be £260. So let's do that as a bit of practice. Select your mini digger, mass editing tool, edit prices. Go to the price column and change it from 280 down to 260. If your JCB is say £150 a day and your driver is £160 a day, then this price would change to 310. Just set it to whatever is correct. Okay. I'm going to leave the editing mode on actually for when we scroll down to look at a few more things. Next thing that I would want you to point you at to look at, scrolling down towards the bottom of the page, is the Portaloo, and you'll see that this is at a cost of £25 per week. The site cabin, a cost of £50 per week. So you might not have a cabin, but whatever you use for your welfare, if it has something that has a cost, it could be that you have a mobile home or something that you use, or some people have converted containers. If it's cost you money or you're renting it, you need to put some cost to it. If you have one where you have a mobile home or a container and it includes the toilet, you don't need to worry about the toilet price, but you do need to make sure that your cabin price is correct. Okay. The next items that you need to check is your 20-ton tipper with landfill tax, and the reason for this is that landfill tax is quite variable around the UK. It's fairly static in most of the country, but once you start to get towards the southeast, the London area, there's a lot of very high landfill taxes, and certain places such as Oxford, Cambridge themselves have quite high landfill costs. And the same goes for the skip with landfill tax. So £180 is fairly common across most of the UK, but I know Oxford is around 260, and a lot of the London boroughs are sort of 240 up to about 280. You will hopefully have a good idea of what your skip with landfill tax costs are, and you need to adjust that. If I change this to say £260, you'll see that my price per skip is £80 more than the default. If you used 10 skips on the job and forgot to make that adjustment, that would be £800 of cost that you would lose. That comes straight out of your bottom line. Okay, so quite an important one to make sure you've got right. And then scrolling down, just a couple more to make you aware of. Depending on what part of the country you are, congestion charge obviously is very much a London thing. That's £11.50. You'll need to adjust that as and when it goes up. And there's also a daily parking fee. So if you're working somewhere where you have to pay for parking every day, you need to adjust that. By default, it's £10, which is a fairly typical price. Again, in the London area, that's more around the sort of £24 to £30 a day. So make sure that figure is set correct. Okay. Skip permit fee. This is one again that's variable. And the other one will be the bay suspension fee. Okay, so just have a quick cast your eye over those, see what they're like. You will obviously have an idea of what those costs are in your local area, and just set them to whatever is relevant. Once you've done that, we can click on Mass Editing Tool again, edit prices, switch that mode off, and job's done. Okay, I obviously didn't change too many of those. I've just left them as default, but you would change them if relevant to your location. So next, we're going to have a quick look at the subcontractor section of the master price book. So on the section filter at the top, click on subcontractor. Right, this section is very simple. There are lists of typical subcontractors, bricklayers, carpenters, sparkies, plumbers, kitchen fitters, joiners, etc. Okay, scaffolders, and you'll see that they all have a list price of £1. Okay, and that's done on purpose. You wouldn't change these ever, you will always leave them at £1 because later on in module 3 we will be using a subcontractor quotation workbook where you can put in cash values for costs. For example, you are doing an extension and your local friendly electrician has said he will come in and supply and fit the new electrics, switches, light fittings, etc. for £300. So in the subcontractor workbook you would say that you're going to have 300 lots of £1, therefore equaling £300. So it's wherever you've got a fixed cost for supplying or fitting an item, you can put that into the estimate, making use of one of these. And again, you can add your own specialist subcontractors. In the London area, there are specialist basement companies, specialist spiral staircase companies, and all sorts of things I've heard because there's a lot of building downwards going on in London. So if you want to add those people in, you would add in a specialist spiral staircase contractor, for example, with a price of £1. So as a little bit of practice, let's do that. We can pick anyone here because they're all roughly the same, so let's pick our joinery contractor and do new resource. We can change the name of our new resource because obviously it used joinery contractor as a template, so we want to add to this. So this could be a specialist staircase fitter, for example. Unit cost will be £1. Type, joinery contractor. We could leave him as a joinery contractor or we could choose a different type of labourer. There are specialist contractors, so you might want to put him down as a specialist. Entirely up to you. I think I'm going to put him down as a specialist on this occasion. Delivery and payment, VAT and wastage. Once you're happy with those, click OK. And there we go. We've now added a new type of subcontractor. Okay, so subcontractor part, very, very simple. The only one other item in here that you need to worry about is this line here for flat roof waterproofing. Because flat roof waterproofing is traditionally costed as a supply and fit by the square metre rate, the workbook that we use for flat roofing that makes use of the flat roof waterproofing line does the same thing. So where in most places there is a material cost and then a separate labour cost for fitting a material, for the flat roof waterproofing, because it's traditional, there is one line of £40 a square metre by default. That's a fairly typical price if you're doing an asphalt typical finish to a roof. If you're going to be fitting a GRP, fiberglass, various poured rubber type finishes, obviously the cost per square metre would jump up, typically somewhere between about £90 to £125 per square metre. So if you do flat roofing and you use a different system, what you would need to do is come in here and do Mass Editing Tool, Edit Price, go to your flat roof waterproofing and change it to whatever would be the correct price for the system you're going to be fitting. Okay, so it could be, for example, £90 a square metre, if that's the price of the waterproofing system you're going to be fitting to your flat roof. Again, once you finish that, Mass Editing Tool, Edit Prices, and that is now saved. Okay. And finally, the sundry section of the price book. So go to the top menu, the section drop down, and click on sundry. Okay. And once again, this is a list of people with or tasks with a £1 cost. And you'll see that these are mostly preliminary costs, things like design fees, engineers fees, management tasks, etc., insurance. They're things where you will apportion the cost. It's not going to be calculated, it's something where you will know what the cost is. So for example, if you have to pay a structural engineer to do some calcs for a knock-through and the steels that are going to be going in there, you might be paying him £500. So again, there is a workbook that has a cost for the structural engineer and you would type in 500 lots of £1. There's a site survey here. That could be an asbestos survey, it could be a ground survey. A recent example we had was a bat survey, which was very expensive. So if you have to have a survey and you know what the cost is going to be, you would put it in there, and that would be a factor of X times £1. And As before, you can add your own sundry costs in here should you want to. That is the master price book in its entirety. So what we're going to do now is come out of the master price book by clicking on the close button on the top left corner. Once we're in the library of price books, we're going to click on close once more. One last thing we're going to do on this module is have a look at something called My Favorites, and I mentioned this earlier on. You should see on your menu a My Favorites button, so click on this. And you'll see here that we have lists of various merchants. You see that I've got the assorted merchants I've got in my price book. And as I mentioned before, you can select the merchant that you want to use for an estimate. You would do this prior to starting the estimate, because what happens is if, for example, I select Juicen here and tick this box and I click apply, what happens is the software goes through all my specifications and changes my HBXL price tracker block, for example, to a Juicen block, because that's what I want to reach him as my supplier. Okay, or I could do the same with Travis. Or, as I mentioned before, I could do a pick and mix. So to use the quarry example, I could set everything to Juicen or Build a Warehouse or Travis or whoever. But I could set my aggregate to HBXL price tracker. Okay, because as we were doing before, I edited the price of my aggregates to match what I was getting from my local quarry. They were going to supply me with all my sand and cement, etc. By doing that, I'm saying that I'm going to use, in this example, Juicen for everything except I'm going to use HBXR price tracker products which have been modified to match my local quarry. And if I click on apply, that will very quickly make those changes to all the specifications. So the specifications are set out with those material choices. The specifications itself we're actually going to look at in the next module, number 2. So, closing words on Module 1, spend a few hours tweaking your price book. Make sure you do have the correct costs. Okay, as I said before, accurate costs make you better informed when you're making decisions about discount, etc. It gives you information for cash flow, profit forecasts, and to be able to accurately drill down into the running costs of your estimate. The old adage, put good in, get good out, I've repeated myself, is very, very relevant. Okay, that's it for Module 1. Just a few closing words on this. As I said before, put good in, get good out. It's pretty important that you spend a bit of time on making sure that you do have accurate costs in your price book. This allows you to use the data so far more accurately, things like estimating your actual costs, correctly calculating your net and gross profits. This means that you can more accurately negotiate discounts and deals with a client. If you don't know what your costs are, you never really have an accurate idea of what your profit markup and how many pounds you're going to make profit. You might actually negotiate all your profit away if you're not careful. If you've got accurate costs, it means you have an accurate snapshot of your profit. You know exactly how far you want to negotiate for the circumstance. It also allows you to have an accurate forward view of your cash flow, which also means that you can then monitor costs during the build and help you rationalize your prospective costs versus your actuals. Any of you who understand your accountancy side of things, or you have an accountant who helps you with the business, will appreciate that massively. And that's it, end of Module 1. Please come back and join me for Module 2.